Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Digital Cargo Webinars 2021. My name is Arno Lambert, and I'm the One Record Engagement Manager at IATA. This is a series of 7 different episodes. We're halfway through, so we're nearly there. We already heard from Henk on the executive session. We had David talking about digital cargo and Sonia on interactive cargo. Today, it's all about pilots and Hackathon. And then next week, we will talk more on the One Record data model and a special on EU federated project. So for everybody's convenience, this meeting is recorded for future use. It will be posted on the IATA website, and the link will be on YouTube. So I'll make everybody nice and famous. And can I ask everybody to write questions in the Q&A box on the side on the menu bar, so that as the presentations go, we'll address all the questions right at the end. So feel free to write as the presentations go along. Thank you. So let me just quickly introduce our speakers today. We'll first start off with Dr. Philip Billion, who's the Senior Manager Data Solutions at Lufthansa Cargo. I will join him in his presentation later on. And then we have 2 distinguished speakers. We have Thomas Gessner, he was president of Virtual Control, and he took part in last year's virtual hackathon, and they created a very fancy system all to tackle the ULD problems, so you'll hear more about that. And then right at the end, we have Pramod Rao, who's the CEO of Nextual Technologies, who also took part in the hackathon and created the first One Record software as a service. So that's the quick agenda, talking about the pilots, going to the hackathons, and seeing some live demos. All right, so I will go over to Philip to start off the presentation.
Thank you very much, Arno. Yeah, thank you all for joining and giving me the stage here. I want to start with my favorite quote currently. It's what you see, the electric light bulb did not come from continuous improvement of candles. And this is a quick remark on the basic aspect of One Record. It was not designed around compatibility with the current systems. It was designed from scratch with a lot of liberties here to use modern technology and to make use of all the things that have changed in the last 30 years. And this is, I think, the absolute right approach, but it also indicates that we have a little bit of a change topic here, because it's not backward compatible. And this transition and this change that needs to happen and has already started to happen is the topic that we, Arno and I, have made some thoughts about and we want to share in this presentation here. So first, let's take a look of what is already possible and what can be done with One Record. So you see the core of our current data exchange is usually master arrowable data, house arrowable data, security information, customs, company information, milestones, and all that is already possible in One Record and is tested and implemented. I mean, Pramod will show some examples of how that's going to work, but I think for the core of our activities, we are beyond piloting and research and testing currently. But what is also important to see is that there's another layer of information that's now available with One Record, where there are no standards in place throughout the supply chain, how this data can be shared. And we are talking here about piece information. We're talking about temperatures, geopositions, shocks, CO2 emissions, digital accompanying documents, photos, driver licenses, and all this, what is currently at the fringes, what will become essential for our industry is possible with One Record. And as far as I know, One Record is the only multimodal neutral standard where you can share this information with any, potentially with any stakeholder that has a stake in these entities we're talking about. And so that's the current status. We have core of information. We used to call it or we call it the air cargo core ontology, which is tested and fine. And then we are now extending at the fringes, but those things are going to come, and there's a big demand on that. So if data is the new jet fuel, we could say one record is the biggest pipeline you can build, because it is capable of taking all those informations and exchanging them. So, but in terms of transition, do we need a big bang rollout? Do all stakeholders need to switch from one day to another, or how are we going to do that? I know I'm still seeing that what is possible slide. One more, and then we're there. Perfect. And so our approach was to take a look at what is really needed for implementing one record. For, you know, the world is very different. We have different use cases. We have different applications. And if you take a look at the standard, there are a lot of requirements on different complexity levels. And what we found out is we might not need all features of one record for every pilot, for every use case out there. And so the idea was to put the features of one record on a scale, 1 to 5. Here you have the levels, you see them. And from that, we enable stakeholders to identify what level they need to implement to be able to put their use case in real life. And this is the approach. If you take a look, for example, at level 2, we already have a lot of APIs out there. Usually they are just generic and not following any standardized way or any standardized data model. But a lot of airlines carriers, for example, do have a lot of tracking APIs where you can put in an airworthiness number, you get tracking information, status information, milestones, and so on. So often even without authentication. And this is essentially what we see, what you need to provide to set up such an API on level 2. It's essential data provision. It means you need all the level 1 features, which are using the data model, using the HTTP requests, providing the company information as logistic object, and use the linked data concept. Plus, you have the error model, publish, subscribe, events, and basic layer of access control implemented. And that's what you need for such a use case to share IoT data in a limited environment. And I think this is really a very good starting point. You don't need to implement all the stuff that you will need at a later stage, but you can start and you can fulfill all the requirements. If you only want to pull that data, if you only want to retrieve that data, then you even only need to be on level 1 as a company to participate in one record and consume that IoT data. It gets more complicated if we come to legally relevant documents in a way, for example, the contract, the airworthiness or customs information, because there parties along the supply chain might need to request for corrections. We don't see that for IoT data. Doesn't make much sense, but in the airworthiness, often a weight needs to be corrected or other information need to be adjusted. And there, for example, we need the change request mechanism, we need versioning, audit trace, certification, and the momento function to get the snapshot when data is used for a legal purpose at a point of time. So that's level 3. Based on that, we then can get also on top get over to multi-party environments where we do not only have the traditional players like forwarder and carrier, but also shippers involved, maybe new stakeholders, startup, and so on. And there we have this, for example, the publish subscribe mechanism in multi-link and multi-party environments, or the access delegation. That comes in place where we have really multi-party environments with legal documents using this information. And level 3 is, of course, the big target picture to have an open federated trust network where you can just connect with a click with any stakeholder that has a stake. And this is a little bit of a target picture currently that still needs piloting and testing. But nevertheless, the earlier we start for every use case on a lower level, the easier the transition will be. And clearly identifying these levels of capabilities will enable stakeholders to do matchmaking. You know, I'm on level 2, you're on level 1, so you can consume data from our service. You know, we want to exchange shipment record, we both need to be on level 3. And I think this is the way forward, not seeing one record as a monolithic, big set of requirements that can get a little bit more complicated on further levels, but splitting it down to what you need, starting with the core. You can even start, no matter what you build, using the one record data model in the background. That, from my perspective, absolutely makes sense to provide future compatibility, and then go to level 1, 3, or whatever fits for your use case. And with this, we're going to have, you know, islands. We're going to start with islands distributed over the supply chain, and then have a limited effort to connect and to then go over to a completely open, integrated, federated network. Yeah, and so Arnaud, the next question then would be, where do we stand with the current pilots?
Thank you very much. So, right at the beginning of the last year, we actually saw we started the pilot projects. We actually had 7 pilots dotted a bit around the world. This map actually is not complete. As you can see, we still haven't included the IoT pilots in this, but we see that it's companies from literally around the world, so it is becoming a truly global standard. We haven't put all the companies on there because otherwise Europe, we wouldn't see them, because we're close to getting about 200 companies who are at different stages, and it's thanks to the transparency of the different levels of implementation that we can actually achieve this number. You don't have to wait for a big bang rollout to do the whole thing in one go. You can do step by step, so you can actually onboard onto this project a lot easier. We're actually got quite a few more companies in the pipeline, including in Russia and Africa. So this will actually, hope next year we'll be able to give you an even better picture. And new use cases are being thought of every single day, and looked at implementing and getting new business partners, all that. So it's quite big, and yeah, it's also thanks to the collaboration between all of the companies working on one record. Because as we heard on the executive webinar, we had Christian Riga from Riga Software, who actually announced publicly that they were graciously making public the XML to one record converter to help current XML users to onboard onto one record. And it's thanks to this collaboration that we can actually enhance and speed up the adoption rate of one record. And we got to remember that the one record standard is developed by the industry for the industry. So it's getting a big momentum. We also had a very good news from Germany a couple of weeks ago, which Philip actually led, because we actually got the Fraunhofer Institute, who's actually looking at also implementing that. So we're actually getting a lot of big names, and also we're now working with MSC. So that's getting a lot of traction, and we're seeing that more and more partners are seeing the value and wanting to add and be part of this journey. So that's one thing, but how do we also adopt and increase the adoption rate? Well, we actually do hackathons, and these help us to innovate and find out and come up with new solutions. So we're actually very proud to announce that we're having our next hackathon this year on the 10th to the 12th of September. Unfortunately, it's virtual due to the COVID situation. We would love to have it face-to-face, but we're going to have to wait for one more year, unfortunately. And we'd like to thank our main sponsors of Riga and PayCargo, together with Nextshore and IBS, to actually make this happen. So this year, we actually got quite a few surprises for you. So let's just have a quick look. So what happens is 28 hours. It actually starts on Saturday morning, and we actually have 4 challenges, maybe 5 this year, and we actually put a cash prize, and we're actually going to go with a few surprises on enhancing the one record data model and seeing what creativity comes up. For the teams, we actually asked for minimum 2 and maximum 6. And to actually make it easier, no previous experience is required. Last year, we actually saw that we actually had about half the team members who actually had no cargo experience. So that was a first, and they came up with a lot of good ideas. So don't let that stop you. And by being fully remote, you can be around the world. Last year, we had 172 participants from literally every country of the world. It was really amazing. And don't forget, the registration site opens on the 12th of July. So more news will come then. And to give you a bit of a sneak peek, because I know you're very eager, we actually created this very nice graphic. And in a way, it actually represents and summarizes all 4 of the challenges coming up this year. So I will let your imagination go crazy and think what could be the challenges, but don't think just of the big picture. Look at the background. So with that, I think it's time to actually, we talked about the hackathon and what you can do, but let's see what actually happened from 2 participants last year. So I'd first like to go and hand over the speaking to Thomas Gessler from Virtual Control, who actually created a data as a service system. So you can have his screen. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Arno. And let's see if I can share my screen here.
We can see
So
it.
you see my screen?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Arno and Jutta and team. Just to echo what you just mentioned, for us at Virtual Control, the hackathon was in 2020 was a major event. I would say the major event, which helped us to increase visibility, not just in the industry, in the air cargo industry, but as well being able to work with real life data and getting connected into the ecosystem and see what can be done based on the one record data standard, which for us was an amazing success and an amazing proof point as well of the technology we are building, and where we assume we can support the industry achieving far greater level of transparency throughout the ULD transfer and management process. And I'm happy to have the opportunity here today to share our platform with you, which we created based on the findings in the air cargo industry that actually the tracking of ULDs and the cargo is pretty well progressing, right? We see the start core upgrading VLEs or upgrading ULDs with VLE tags. We see that there are sufficient amount of reader infrastructures at the airports and cargo hubs. However, there are still blind spots which are causing concerns for the various parties like freight forwarders, in particular in remote locations without any infrastructure. And the challenge at Virtual Control we have been facing, and which was the driver and motivation behind our entire development, was questions around the responsibility and the accountability of cargo and associated ULDs. So questions where we have been facing in the discussions with airlines, with ground handlers, which cannot be answered still, is like which custodian party caused certain damages on ULDs and who was handling cargo not in the defined tolerances. So especially when we talk about information around which kind of shocks have been cargo have been exposed to, what kind of temperature variations cargo have been exposed to. This information is hard to consolidate and collect throughout the entire shipping process. As well, similar questions like which party was in charge of a ULD last before it got lost, and I think that is for many of the attendees here a potential concern, as we see that approximately 10% of the ULD fleet gets lost per year, which is a significant revenue exposure for all those companies. But one of the major drivers was as well that we do see that the UCR process, so the ULD transfer process, is still extremely error-prone and inefficient, as it is still paper-based. And I think when we heard about the possibility of the hackathon, the driver here was to understand how can we use the new one record data format to digitize exactly that kind of handover process, and how can we contribute to a far leaner, faster, and reliable process in data exchange among freight forwarders, ground handlers, airlines, but as well providing more transparency to shippers and consignees at the end. And of course, as always in these procedures and processes, we have been very much driven as well by findings like how to ease the audit process, how to support the safety procedures and processes by having the ULD tag information available fast and in a digitized format. So these have been the major drivers of our development of a platform where we increase the trust and the transparency among the various players, and we do this anywhere and everywhere around the globe without having the need of any kind of new infrastructure or IT investment. I think this is good news for an industry which is extremely under margin pressure. And what we developed are two things here. On the one hand side, we created a mobile app, and that was the scope of the hackathon, to digitize the ULD transfer process, and we included as well the interlining process in this mobile app, and to assist the currently very manual, visible in the inspection and damage detection process on the tarmac, and provide this information electronically on a mobile app, which can run on any kind of devices independently, if it is Android, Apple, if it is a Zebra device, Honeywell device, which is used by many ground handlers today. We are capturing as well the ULD tag information, which is important for the audit and safety and compliance procedures, as mentioned. And on top of that, we are able to combine BLE data coming from Descartes and Core at the moment, and enrich it and combine those data with the visual information we are capturing on the mobile app as a replacement for the paper-based UCR procedure. So we are bringing together basically the two worlds of, on the one hand side, established BLE tag information, enriching it with custodian-related information from the handover and ULD transfer process, and provide new transparency and a great level of trust throughout the entire shipment process for all involved parties. And we're doing this by using the one record data format, as we believe that this is the most flexible and trustworthy data protocol which can be used among those parties, but well knowing that, and as Philipp mentioned in the beginning, as the transition process between the traditional kind of MAC message data exchange to a new data format of one record might take some time, we support as well this kind of transition period and support multiple technology or integration capabilities to make this features and this mobile app working basically right now without that any party has to be supporting the one record standard at that point in time. So our mission and the vision here is to provide exactly this kind of platform of trust, transparency, and evidence for the tracking process, but as well for the inspection process. We built a artificial intelligence and machine learning based damage detection, and I'm happy to share that solution with you in a minute here. And we believe that with those enriched information across the shipment process, not just knowing where cargo is located and where a ULD is located, but as well answering the question, who is in charge of this ULD, who is in charge of the cargo at a certain point in time throughout the shipping process. We believe that we can contribute significantly to a higher level of protection of shipments, like it is not possible so far. Yet, where did our journey start? And just to give you a high-level overview, what we achieved, and as I stated in the beginning, Hackathon was for us the booster for the adoption of the solution in the industry, and which helped us as well to open doors to major players in the industry. And we are happy that our solution is in usage in the Hong Kong, in some companies in Hong Kong, namely GCell and DAS, who are supporting us as well on the future development of the solution. And with the help of IATA and others, we have been able to create a solution which we believe can support the penetration of the one record standard significantly. And on the other hand side, already from day one on, supporting airlines, ground handlers, and freight forwarders with a solution which helps to increase efficiency and helps to increase visibility as well in shipments, as stated before. So let me switch briefly to a demo to show you a little bit how the solution works. So that is the mobile app where users are getting logged in. And what you will see is a screen pretty lean, pretty clean, and easy to use, well knowing that it is always a question as well, how much training can be put into these kind of new systems. What the system supports here is a camera function where you can capture the transferring ULD. You see that the serial numbers of the ULD gets automatically detected, and it supports the capturing of any kind of shape information or damages of ULDs. So you're capturing pictures, under which condition you receive or you send a ULD. You are able to correct potential mismatches, and of course can document as well where have been damages or where are damages visible which you don't want to be in charge of and want to be made accountable for. So the mobile app supports the visual inspection process inspectors are doing today already in a digital way by just simply taking pictures of the ULDs in transfer and making sure that these pictures gets stored in a secure way and can be used throughout the entire shipment process by any party involved. The mobile app is basically nothing else than a reflection of the paper-based UCR procedure. So you see the information which usually gets filled as well in the normal manual process of the transfer, where you can assess the ODLN code, can put inspection remarks behind, and are able to highlight as well which kind of equipment might have been shipped with the ULD, so what kind of net, what kind of straps, and of course you have the picture evidence of the conditions as you captured it. We are not just supporting ULDs, we are supporting as well the pallet stacks. So what we came up with in the latest version is as well detecting serial numbers of pallet stacks, which you can automatically capture and consider here for the transferring process. So it's basically the same procedures where you can put those information into the mobile app, and basically at the end of the inspection and handover process, what the solution supports is that all information gets identified in terms of which party signed off the handover, what is the opposing party, and we enrich this with the electronical signature to make it clear who was accountable for the sign-off and who is in charge of the information provided. At that stage, and that is the magic happens in the background, at that stage, all the data collected so far will be transferred and transmitted to the connecting parties, either via the one record standard. In case parties are not applying to the one record standard at that point in time, it is possible as well to use any kind of other standard formats like MAC messages, XML. We have an open API which supports that. So what we're achieving here is basically an electronical record of the transfer, which helps as well potentially the grant handlers to get information, transfer information right away into their ULD stock management systems, which we tested with a number of grant handlers, so that the entire manual process of a ULD transfer and ULD inspection can be digitized, can be automated, and can be done based on, let's say, the evidence of pictures taken and the information about the custodian party coming along with it. Let me quickly highlight the process, how it works, and how it looks like today in a schematical way here. So what we are supporting with this mobile app and the underlying web application is that the entire process between, or the handover process between cargo agents, freight forwarders to the airline, ground handlers, receiving airlines, so the interlining process here as well, and the receiving parties can be automated and is supported by the One Record standard, and an integration into the various ULD systems or demerge systems is fully supported, and which got proven in a test and pilot with the parties you see here on the upper side of the screen. So finally, where we see the biggest benefits for that solution, beside that we are supporting the One Record standard and come up with a solution which is adoptable from day one, supporting the One Record standard, making sure that there is a business case behind the One Record standard as such, by digitizing the UCR process, is that we are simply able to track the ULD conditions along anyone who was involved in this handover process of ULDs. And the good news is that as we are not focusing on new IT investment, as it is a simple mobile app which can run on any kind of device, that is possible as well in remote location where classical reader infrastructure is not available. We see as well, based on the feedback from the participating piloting companies here, an increase in efficiency by getting rid of the paper-based ULD transfer process. Ground handlers are telling us that they see an improvement by 80% possible for digitizing this entire process. We see as a positive side effect that we are not touching any existing process, but just replacing a paper-based process with a digital application and digital data exchange, helping to increase efficiency among the entire ecosystem here for the air cargo participants. We are supporting the full data and audit trail, which I think is a very great side effect, as we see that auditing is causing massive challenges due to the paper-based procedures in place. And needless to say that we are fully compliant with the data privacy and country-specific regulations across the globe. The low-tech implication I just highlighted. And yeah, finally, it's as well thinking about how to lower the company's risk profile. and how to impact potentially as well your insurance premiums, reducing financial and safety risks. That is something which we see as the positive side effects of having an application in place, allowing you to digitize a process which I believe is one of the most or highest cost drivers in the entire air cargo business procedures and in the handover process between the parties. That's it from my side. Arno, over to you.
Thank you very much, Thomas, and thank you for showing us the software that you actually built. I think just to quickly clarify, I'm sure we have questions later, but the majority of the work actually did it in during the hackathon, and then you worked on it. So it's something. The hackathon serves as a base, and then people take the time and then work and make it even better and improve it and add extra components. So yeah, it's not that the whole thing was done in 28 hours. I wish it was like that, but
no. For us, it's the booster, as I said, and I can clearly can only encourage everyone to participate and to benefit from that kind of platform of IATA, which was a great supporting platform for us.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And on that note, I will actually pass the buck to Pramod, who will give us a demo on his software as a service, also an idea that came from the hackathon. And then after that, we'll take the questions. Pramod?
Sure. Thank you very much, Arno. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I will need the screen share. Yeah, here we go. Thank you very much. Just let me know when you're able to see my screen.
Yes.
I'll put it into full screen mode so it's more visible. Is everybody able to see this? Excellent. Thank you very much, Arno, and calling me for this session, being able to present what we did from the hackathon to our SaaS. The journey here, I've tried to put together a few slides here to show everybody where we started, how we came about, and at the end of the hackathon, what we decided to do with what resulted. So with that, let me get started. The journey actually began with our involvement with CCS UK at London Heathrow. We were invited to develop the OneRecord server from the specifications I had put out so that they could run a pilot last year in 2020, starting from May all the way to about July or August. It eventually concluded in October with a very successful note. And I have to thank them for inviting us to the table, get involved, and to be able to experience what Iot OneRecord was. We had been keeping our eye on it. We've been observing the specifications rollout that the team was doing, and we were confident we could build the server for them. So let me just briefly go through this pilot because much of the fundamentals were put in place during the discussions with them. This was a IATA declared pilot, and LHR and CCS UK started off with the implementation of the OneRecord specification. They had a look at it, they shared it with us, we had a look at it. They wanted to ensure that they could test the integrity of messages that are being passed through so that the security, the available permission leveling, and the sharing of data was going to be crucial to them in their community. The initial trade lane that was selected was the LHR Hong Kong route, and the pilot started with ensuring that a airway bill could be sent out to the airline. In this case, it was Cathay Pacific. It was sent to the airline. They could receive it with full integrity in the OneRecord object format, and they were able to send back status messages on the shipments. So it was kind of ambitious in a way, and a lot of agencies were involved. As you can see, we had BT as a sponsor, CCS UK was the user group representative, Donata Geodis was the forwarder that participated in the pilot. There was Border Force and IAG Cargo who are observers. We had Virgin Atlantic as observers, and GLS Hong Kong. I have to admire their enthusiasm in supporting this project. They developed the OneRecord server for Cathay Pacific, put it in place, and we exchanged the data with them. So with all of this, the system build timelines are shown below. We began groundwork in April of 2020 and completed the development and demonstrated the proof of concept around end of April, sorry, and we updated to version 1.2 in June, because 1.0, what we call 1.0, was actually a little bit not too stable. So we waited until the next version came along. We had some clarifications with IATA. We worked it out between April and June, and then the trials began. The trials, well, let me take a step back and how we built it. This slide shows a little bit about that. I'm sorry it's very busy on the right side, but I'll walk you through the bullets as we go through. The concept of one record, of course, is shown on the left. Henk prefaced to this as the Swiss cheese model. And it is obviously, the highlights are that it's piece-centric, piece-level tracking can be available. It's physics-oriented. It's a single source of truth, and it's data-driven. So these are the four important tenets on which the one record standard sits. And then we have the core airline ontology that defines all of the different use cases, the common terminologies involved, the kind of use cases that it supports. And these are only a few. As we go along, we discover more. And I think there has to be multiple layers coming out of this too, but that remains to be seen. As we grow and mature, I think more and more will come on here. As you can see, it handles everything from the shipper's letter of instruction all the way to cargo distribution, the ECMRs, ULD tracking, declaration to customs, ground handlers, of course, an important part of the ecosystem, and also includes IoT. So we decided to focus on the, like I mentioned, the integrity of the messages that were transported and IoT, and that's what I'll demonstrate today later in the session. We developed this as a node in node format because the CCS UK represents approximately about 700 or so air freight forwarders in the London area. Sorry, all of UK actually. So they are actually a UK-based organization. They represent all of them in all the airports. I think there are 8 active airports for cargo. And the idea was that at the end of the test, if it was successful, make it available to them to start adopting and experiencing the benefits of one record, along with perhaps a transition phase where they're currently using systems, and help them in their transition so that we consult with them, we educate them, and we bring them over. So with that goal in mind, this was developed as a node. We have some shared resources at the back. We created each node to represent one freight forwarder, so they can open an independent account. They get an independent one record ID. The certificates are server-based, and it was hosted on the Azure Microsoft Cloud located in the UK. So with that in mind, I'm coming to a slide which shows exactly what the test was. The test is shown below here at the bottom of the screen. So Geodis, the freight forwarder involved, cut an airway bill, which was then transmitted to Cathay Pacific. The flight that was chosen was a flight from London Heathrow to Hong Kong. There may have been an intermediate interline exchange, but I think it was a direct flight, if I recall that correctly. And the data was lodged with the GLS Hong Kong server over in Hong Kong. They received the message, and they in turn sent out status messages back, the shipment status objects that came back, and patch updates that came back to the server in London. And Donata was the recipient of it. Obviously, Heathrow and BT were the sponsors of this entire pilot. And I'm happy to say that all of the data integrity was maintained, and that gave them a lot of confidence in being able to utilize this in production. So with that, I just wanted to mention that one record is so fast between 2 servers that we actually had to interrupt the process. We actually went through the test with about 5 airway bills, and we stopped at each point, interrupted the message queue, showed them what was coming and going, demonstrated that in the live pilot, and made sure that everybody understood what was going on in the background. The server-to-server communication is incredibly fast, and it's almost instantaneous, just as the promised performance level of one record and specifications put forth. The actual test and integrity of the data was verified by making sure that paper documentation was sent in advance. A manual check at London confirmed that the data integrity was maintained. The airway bill cut in paper was made sure that it was received in advance. It was kept, not secret, but it was kept away from site. And after the messages were received, made sure that the integrity of the data that was transported was verified at the other end. And then all the status updates that came back were also verified. So this gave us, complete confidence that exchange of this nature was possible. And anybody else involved in it, such as Donata as the ground handler, could also access that data, because OneRecord is all about transparency and visibility, which again, I'll hopefully be able to demonstrate in the demo that's coming up. With that successful conclusion in July, we got very enthused in engaging with the hackathon last year. And what I have here is a legacy screen that we developed in the hackathon. Of course, it was bare bones. We made sure that all of the data was also visible so that we could, continuously keep checking. We built an interface showing exactly how, how the airway bills could be displayed. We started playing with some interface elements and so on and so forth. And we took part in all of the four challenges last time. That was a good time for us. We put a agreement and partnership together with PayCargo. We also demonstrated payments integration on claims, which was continues to be a very hot topic. Obviously, integrating payments and so forth. The OneRecord infrastructure is safe enough to support financial transactions as well. Of course, PayCargo is a parallel connection that goes through, but the data that comes and goes into PayCargo makes sure that the security of the data and the integrity of the data is maintained when we cross the line between OneRecord and a payment system. So we took part in the quote and book. We used the API that was open. I think Qatar Airways, Lufthansa, and I believe one more airline was opened up for us. And we took that chance to integrate to them, made sure that quotations were booked. And then we also showed the payments integration there. And all of this gave us confidence that this thing is going to work. It's a very strong foundation, gives us the ability to develop fast. And we chose the technology stack for those who might be interested in this presentation. We chose Angular as a front-end presentation layer, use core.NET at the back end, and we use Microsoft SQL Server because although the specification might give you an overview that it could be done on maybe a relationship-less database, it's important for relationships to be established so that the workflows are managed properly. So we chose Microsoft SQL Server for that, the enterprise version, which automatically comes with country-specific security such as GDPR, regulations are met and so forth. They all support that natively. With that, I'd like to show you what the current maturity model of our software is. I apologize for the busyness of this slide, but I thought it was important to put out a block diagram so everyone can appreciate how we've implemented the security, how the entire OneRecord server is architected, and the integrations to backend systems and other sources of data, such as IoT, can be brought in. Also, enterprise systems can be taken in, and data from maybe legacy systems that use Cargo IMP, Cargo XML can be brought into the OneRecord messaging bus. So right here, the center right sits the OneRecord server. We've divided it, obviously, architected into a classical web architecture, which into the database server, an API server, and the application server. The application server is a presentation layer mostly, and it uses obviously a couple of different security protocols. It uses JWT to begin with, and it also uses certificates so that trusted applications only are let into the server and to be able to interact with the data. The trusted certifications are also delegated over a messaging bus so that the tenants that are constantly sending data in and out they're ensured that they are by permission and they follow the same protocols. So any lesser secure environment is rejected, so you know your data is safe. Ownership of data is tantamount, so we made sure that that is in place. And then we have these back-end enterprise systems that come in, and we've architected what seems to be working in the industry. Many of them use MQ servers. Those are used to be able to send data in, and we have got an architecture in place which can be done through that and brought into the server, so that data can flow in and flow out. In the transition period, this is important for enterprises, but as they appreciate the integrity, the power of one record, they're also trying to press some of their vendors to go back and say, can they support that natively to the system, which is a good sign for one record as such, for its adoption worldwide and so forth. So with that, I'd like to show you a brief glimpse of what I'm going to demonstrate. This is the current SaaS product model that we have developed on the app servers. This is the dashboard. I'll talk more about it as we come forth. So you can see it's come a long way from the hackathon. There's a lot of important metrics that are being put on the dashboard itself. We are focusing on data and analytics here so that users can have value from the status updates that they are using. So if we, out of the 4 challenges, let me go back quickly. Out of the 4 challenges, we picked number 2 to demonstrate the visibility and transparency, so that that can become obvious once a freight forwarder gets in, for example, and maybe a ground handling agency gets in. So they're aware of it, and they get an interface like this, which shows them the status of all the shipments that have been put into the system and so forth. The next slide is, I want to emphasize that the connections in one record are very, very important. And what we've done is we've taken all of the registered freight forwarders and the airlines and put it into a global directory. This global directory is searchable through the product, and it's as easy as LinkedIn perhaps to connect to these airlines, ground handling agencies, and other freight forwarders that you're collaborating with by just sending a connection request. And at the back end, if the connection request is accepted, all of the messaging and the messaging bus connections and all of the heavy lifting is done for you. So you don't need to redo all of that when you're talking about connections, because that is a complicated process. There's a protocol that follows, there's a handshake that is established, and then data starts flowing from the owner to the other members of the ecosystem. So we simplified all that by simply making it as easy to connect as LinkedIn, for example. And right here is the interface that shows how all of this comes together, and we have detailed tracking from all the airlines that we support, and we support quite an extensive number of them. And with that, let me go over to my demonstration here. Just in time to refresh that. Oh, I didn't. So anyhow, this is the login screen. I'm doing this from a demo setup, and you'll see a few shipments here, which are obviously I'll use to demonstrate how it all works. So once an account, a user is logged into an account, the first thing they see is a dashboard, and it puts forward the data analytics dashboard here. There's a filter to see today's shipments, yesterday, 7 days, 30 days, and 90 days. I'm just going to click on 90s to show you what data we've put into the system for demonstration purposes. And you see that there's a total number of 11 shipments going through various stages. This is still being tweaked because various people want to see it in various ways. So we're getting inputs to do this. But in essence, these are what we call simple widgets. These are the statuses of the shipments as we receive them from the airlines. They're put into little widgets. You can simply click on each widget and see which of these airway bills that it refers to. You can go back to the dashboard, refresh it, and again, go back to 90 days and start looking at each one. So it's a quick drill down, as well as on the surface gives you a full view of all your shipments that are going through. What we have below are what we call logical triggers. These are triggers based upon the analysis of the status that comes in. So we have triggers for load confirmations, which is very important for freight forwarders so that they're assured that their loads are actually done according to how the airline has promised, the date it has promised, on which flight it has promised. We have offload triggers. This makes sure, this is tweaked data, so you might see some of the numbers off. But in any case, the offloads are another important metric that freight forwarders look for. So this is done by the analysis of the status messages this comes in. Then we have two other important ones, such as flown as booked and missed arrivals. So these are also things that freight forwarders keep an eye on, and the customers do as well. The shippers are also interested in making sure that it was indeed flown as promised and so forth, and all of that is available just at a glance when you begin. Down below here, what we do is the analytics has been presented in two different ways, in something that the freight forwarders and the shippers can use in their perhaps strategic thinking, in the sense that if they're working with a set of airlines, the system starts rating them on some important parameters such as flown as booked and arrived as promised. So they can take a quick look at how many of them and how the airlines are performing for them. And on the right is anonymous data that is set within the system. So other freight forwarders are using it or using the system or sending in shipment records. And we see the ability to be able to float that information up to each of the members on one record, so they can take a view of what's happening with the others and which other airline, for example, is performing, and they can take strategic decisions on what kind of cargo to ship with what kind of airline. So this gives them an important strategic metric to start analyzing and making sure that they're able to strategically make sure that what they're paying for is what they get, that sort of a thing. Let me go down this menu list. This is the menu that supports the submission of data to airlines. We currently have support for airway bills, houseway bills, the flight manifest, and the event updates. The event updates comes in because there are regulated agents in parts of the world that need to report security declarations before the cargo takes off. The flight manifest, of course, the ground handling agency needs to submit to the airline. The house and the airway bills, of course, are important shipment records that are needed. This also has filters. For example, a large freight forwarder on a global basis might be interested in, say, how many of these shipments are actually coming out of one country. So you can filter this data, refresh the screen, and you would get data pertaining to only shipments that are going out from a particular country or a particular airport. Or you can even filter by an airport pair, or remove this and just look at destination arrivals. So this is becoming more powerful for them to be able to analyze it just sitting at a screen. And all they have to do is to be able to bring airway bills into the system. So before I get into how that is done, I'd like to take a minute and show you what happens when an airway bill is actually tracked. So with that, let me click on this. We have a complete set of status data that's coming in. This was just done about a week ago in another seminar. So I will do a live one now and see how it all works and show you. But you see status updates such as the shipment was booked on what was this, Gulf Air, and the date was on the 17th of June. It was received from the shipper. It was manifested. The shipment is departed. Shipment was received from the flight. The consignee is notified, and the shipment was delivered. So, sorry for that. So with that, this is the kind of status data. Now, some of the airlines gives you pretty detailed data, but some of them might be less specific. But what we're also doing in the background is making sure that the pieces and the weights add up. So that if the cargo was split up in some way, we make sure that we capture the deliveries of both the shipments before we notify the status as received. So the intelligence in the system takes care of that. Those of you who are probably used to earlier systems know that there might be multiple messages coming in because the shipment was split. So you don't get the actual data or appreciate the actual data until you dive into the details of the message and so on and so forth. So that is completely excluded here. What you see here, you can be assured that the entire shipment has arrived. And many of our customers now are finding this very important because they take this data and send them over and share them with the ground transportation that is charged to pick up the cargo at the destination. And sometimes making sure that the entire cargo has arrived is very important to be able to eliminate multiple trips to the airport and so forth. So those are all wasted trips. If a cargo is split up and they need to go 3 times to pick it up, that's just a waste of time. So all of this is built in and is usable by multimodal such as road transport, airline feeders, and so on and so forth. The way to input data currently in the demo version and in the current version is to be able to simply upload it. And I'll show you that here. We've created a very simple interface such as a Dropbox where you can drag and drop a file, which I'm going to do right now. This file is a test FWB in cargo in FWB 16 format. This is the text file that's associated with it. All you need to be able to do is drag and drop it into this area, and it will then be able to upload it and start analyzing it. I'm walking out on a limb here, but as you can see, it all works. And all you have to do is simply hit the history button of this, and it'll come up with the data that the airline has sent up. Yep, this is a Qatar Airways airway bill. That was a live thing that we've never done before. This is anonymized, of course. I have to make sure that we don't expose data more than necessary in the demo. And let us see what kind of information we get. This is all, you're seeing this live actually. It's going out, collecting data from the airline system, bringing it back. So this shipment was received by the shipper May 25th. The shipment was booked. It was manifested, departed, freight was prepared, shipment has arrived, received from flight. And then this is a double hop. So it actually went through one port and then landed in one place and then departed again to its final destination. And the consignee was notified. And you see the detail that you get out of this. So you get all of this, and each piece can be made sure that you can alert a certain member in your office about each of these pieces of information. And I'll come to that in a moment. It's as simple as setting up alerts where you can go into the recipient screen and start looking at each event as it comes through. And you can set up alerts for them. You can set up alerts as a default for all the airway bills that are going through the system, or you can do it for maybe just valuable cargo and you want a particular person in the office or your customer to know exactly what's going on. You can set them up. You can set them up easily by bringing them in as contacts. You can just simply add a contact and bring them into the system. You can configure them as a recipient here, and you can alert them just not as an email, but also through SMS, for example. And in the future, we're looking to support other social media and so forth. But right now, it appears that people seem to prefer getting alerted on their phones. But we're looking at WhatsApp and we're looking at other things. WhatsApp ran through a little shadow there where they had some user agreements about, being able to share the data and all that. And there was a cloud over it for a while. So we stepped back a little bit to observe what the situation was. But as you can see, it's simple to put it on a platform like that so that they can receive the data. We capture the telephone numbers. The telephone numbers are validated throughout the world and made sure it's deliverable 99.99%. We use Twilio as the vendor for that, and you can see that in the log. I won't get into that at the moment. Now, what I showed you about uploading the airway bill is actually, it's cumbersome. You need to be able to go through and make sure that each one of them is uploaded. What we have also is another convenience where you can just upload the airway bill numbers or track it by a single airway bill number. You can upload a file with one airway bill number per line, and that can go in as a bulk upload. But the difference being here that it will not become a one record object. It will only be a tracking solution for the one record. I mean, for the freight forwarder. The object is created only when we get the full airway bill, and that's important to realize, because once it's converted into a logistics object, you can share that data with anybody in one record format, just over a couple of, two one record connected servers, which is far more powerful and obviously far more preferable than doing it through other messaging formats and so forth. The power of the objects is now that the owner is the freight forwarder, let's say, of the airway bill. The airline issues it to the owner. The shipper owns the actual contents of the airway bill and so forth. If they want to share it with anybody, they can, if it is in this format, the one record format. This unfortunately doesn't allow it, but it gives you a convenient way of tracking if that's all you're interested in doing. Yeah, so you might ask, oh, it is all cumbersome, inputting the airway bills one at a time, etc. We already have an integration method in place where you can set up webhooks, and the webhooks can connect to the messaging bus in the background. So let us say that you have a system which generates your airway bills, your cargo management system, for example. All you have to do is to be able to, we issue you a domain, and you can create a specific webhook where you can create a URL that can be put into place, so that you can also define the data format that's done. I prefer Offload, and then you can just add create, and what it will do for you is be able to look at that webhook, listen to it in your native system, and to be able to take all the records that are coming in whichever format you specified. Similarly, you can receive data, and this is the preferred method of doing it, from your native system through the same webhook, which you would just enter into the system here, and then specify the format so that you can continuously take data as it's being generated in your native system. This will involve an intermediate step where there will be a one record node set up so that it's considered to be trusted. That will exchange the certificate, and the native system will then be behind their firewall, and the webhook will make sure that the data integration is possible. And it's done again through the publish subscribe model, because it's done in, as and when the data comes through, it's listened for, it's picked up and put into one record object format. We have a few other things here, such as you can compose your own messages for each of these events. We have a default set that comes with the software, but you can always change it. These are keywords that are common keywords that are used, the depth time, the from airline code, the to airline code, etc. And with that, you can compose your own. You can say, thank you from airline code, maybe, and that will be a message that's added to the message that goes out. So you're just saying thank you to the airline here. With that, let's spend a few minutes on IoT and its integration. I think we are nearly at 6:40. One more minute, and I'll give it back to Arno. So IoT being an important part of One Record, we have the ability now to configure IoT devices, and we've taken the route of being able to identify and support the entire data model. You can add a new device to each of these airway bills. This is how it's specified in the one record model, but there may be a specific integration to each manufacturer, which we're working on. And very soon we're hoping to announce that we'll have integrations to maybe a few IoT providers to the industry. The second phase of the London pilot lays a heavy emphasis on IoT. We're working towards that. And there we want to develop visualization screens, which not only gives you an overlay of the tracking on the airway bill that you particularly, what you saw over here, for example. Let's say I open this screen. We want to be able to map the IoT data right between these events. This might also be divided by the ratio of the times involved and so forth, so you're better able to appreciate what the IoT devices are. But besides that, we'll also bring into the dashboard certain visualizations such as route failures, such as risk zones, using heat maps that are popular to visualize this. The idea here is the value of IoT data resides in its analysis, and we are then able to take that over a period of time and improve the performance of the entire system. And when I mean system, all the players in the ecosystem, so that they're able to come together and watch the anonymized data that's presented on the dashboard, and they know exactly in which geographical location things are failing. And each IoT member or owner of the IoT device, or the person responsible, is able to see only their data, so that they can go in and start improving it. And the heat map should then continuously improve, go from the red zone to maybe a cool blue zone, or a green zone, or an amber zone, and so forth. So that is the specification drawn out for the second pilot that's going to start here right this summer. But we are prepared for that. We're talking to a few IoT providers, and we'll be able to successfully bring them in and not only configure them and overlay that data over here, but also be able to aggregate that data between multiple providers, and to be able to show important features such as how airports are performing, how airlines are performing over certain routes, how ground handlers are performing, and so forth. So with that, I would like to conclude. I know I'm a minute over my time, but back to you, Arno, and let's see if we have any questions.
Thank you very much, Pramod. Thank you. Yes, we actually have quite a few questions, just going through them. But actually, the first one is for Thomas. Question is the app now being used as part of a pilot program, or is it fully functional? And if so, what companies are involved in the program? And before you answer that one, I think it's important to let everybody know that the presentations will be made available afterwards. And I think that it was in the PowerPoint, but just to make sure, can you give us a quick update on which companies you're working with and your situation? Thank you.
No, happy to do so, Arno. Thanks for the question. So the latest status is that we successfully conducted the MVP that is closed. We have the second version of the mobile app available since last week Friday, with the entire feature I demonstrated. Those features have been tested with a number of pilot customers in the Asian region, as well as with the selective ground handling parties and with repair centers. The app is available for piloting for any kind of interested company, independently. It is a freight forwarder, ground handler, airline. So we are in the process of scaling it now and bringing it into the market.
Perfect. And another question sticking to your topic was, what was your main motivator for joining the hackathon that you took part in last year?
I mean, when you are trying to enter a industry which is kind of close in a way of that there are dedicated parties, a number of airlines, a number of big players who are in charge of the majority of the air cargo business, you are looking for ways how to become part of the ecosystem. And that was the main motivator. And secondly, we believe that in particular in the airline industry, or in the air cargo industry to be more precise, there is a kind of need for digitalization. I mean, I've working in the IT industry since 25 years in a number of major companies, and I do see that the air cargo industry can really benefit from great technology innovation, as the colleagues here presented, and we are happy to contribute to a more safer air cargo business globally, and that is something we want to achieve jointly.
Perfect, thank you. Question for you talked in your presentation about fancy and new stuff that you can do with one record. And as Christian Riga put it in the first webinar, it's nice to talk about that, but you also have to take part and do something. So what are you doing fancy on the record? Are you helping somewhere, or are you piloting a specific topic that wasn't possible before?
Is that a general question or directed towards Thomas?
It's directed towards Philip.
All right. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Well, first of all, I mean, we are planning on getting a little bit more active as COVID has given us a little bit of a break last year. And there's a lot going on now, especially also on the Frankfurt community with the state-funded projects. And we also plan on participating in the hackathon, because that's where we think we can get really the best visual effects when we connect the basic one record features with apps like our partners here did with the UAD app, and when we take all those unused data in the community together and build solutions on that data. Because on record is not about generating new data, the data is there, it just needs to be shared, and we see a lot of potential, especially in the trucking, on the trucking side for Frankfurt, for the community, for Germany and Europe. And so this is what we're focusing now on. And the other topic we are focusing on, also implementing and bringing transparency, is CO2, because I think we all have a responsibility here. On record is a perfect basis for CO2 emissions. When you think it through from a target perspective, you want the end user to be able to get the full transparency on what his shipment has affected. And on record is perfect because you have potentially all the stakeholders in the supply chain on the system, and for every segment can make a difference if what kind of fuel is used, if the last mile is done on an electric truck with renewable energy or with fossil fuel. And so we want to work towards that, provide full transparency. Yeah, and the third one is digital accompanying documents. That's a big problem. We have been working towards paperless shipments for a long time now, and maybe the final push we require to get paperless can be done with digital accompanying documents to get all the paper out throughout the supply.
Perfect. So you can be nice and busy this year. That's what we like. All right. The next question. This is to Pramod, and I think it was answered later on in your presentation, because this question came a bit early. But is the Nextshore SaaS already connected to other One Record servers thanks to linked data? And I think you're on mute.
Yes, the only server it's connected to on the. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry. Yes, the One Record server we have is connected as a pilot to the GLS Hong Kong server. That's the one connection we have. I guess they are the only ones who made a One Record server available. So we're sort of finding ourselves in a little bit of a rarefied space here to connect to other servers. So if others do come along, our first reach out will be to make sure that we connect to them and make sure that the data they are willing to provide on that server will be available to participants on our server too. So you know, I have to just encourage the industry to, you know, start putting some in place so that we can also meet other. Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect. And then we actually have another question for you. Is in your PowerPoint there were pilot tests which FWB and PDF files were transmitted and verified. Can you tell us more detail about the purpose of the tests?
Sure. So the PDFs were actually exchanged so that the data integrity of what was transmitted could be verified. So there was a manual team within CCS UK formed, which kept these in advance undercover and made sure that they were opened only after the data was transmitted and received. So when they opened the files, they went through a manual check of exactly what was in the original airway bill, the PDFs, and made sure that all of that information was transmitted across to the GLS Hong Kong server. And then the status updates that came back, were they accurate enough so that we are able to capture that and update the shipment record. So that was the purpose. Because there was no other way to test that, a manual process was used to support the check, if you see what I mean. So the PDF wasn't transmitted, it was exchanged so that the data integrity of the One Record model was ensured. They wanted to make sure that there was no data loss or corrupt data getting into any of the systems, because it goes through a number of steps, right? I mean, you're sending patch updates from the other side, you're sending an object from the side. Is it all being received and processed, and then the status updates, are they coming back okay? That's what it is. So one of the effects that we did find in the test was we had multiple recipients on the LHR side. All of them got that data instantaneously. So it got flooded to all the permission people on the LHR side, which proves that concept of instant transparency and visibility. There were 5 different accounts other than GeoDis who were given permissions on different levels, and all of them got that data. The sub-objects were all distributed, the messaging queues became active, and all of the data went into their accounts.
Okay, thank you. And then we have one question, and it goes, what happens in the track screen if the events are disordered or duplicated? Is it possible?
Well, the messages that we receive may be possible, but we do duplicate them. We make sure that no duplication is presented. We also make sure by analyzing the sequence of the events that we are picking up unique events and putting them in a trail. Now, when each of these events happen, there is a timestamp against the UTC time standard, which we analyze and make sure we present in that sequence. So there's no need to worry about whether something is duplicated or not, or something is, sort of out of sync, if you will. Is there an event that's coming afterwards and so forth? Now, in a rare case, you might see an event coming in after, but that would be a sort of a mistake on the side of the airline, where they record that message in the system after the fact, if you will. Typically, flight manifests come that way. Because sometimes the airlines don't broadcast the flight manifest received from the ground handler until after the plane departs, because that's a practice that's followed so that it's ensured that the cargo is actually loaded according to the manifest. But when we chanced upon such rare cases, what we've done is made it available to ground handlers too, so that they can, from their own system, proceed to provide that data. So within an airway bill, we'll be able to sue all these different data sources and present it in the same timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Good question, by the way. Yeah, that's an industry problem.
We're getting
I
a lot
see that.
of these questions, and it's really good. There are a few questions in between which are a bit commercial and really directed to a specific aspects of the product, both for virtual control and for Nextshore. So what I suggest is, because we can't answer those in an open forum, on the presentation there is the email addresses of our distinguished speakers. So I would suggest that the people that do want to get more information and actually probably just interact with and learn more about the product, to just contact them, and I'm sure they don't mind that, to get in touch with them, and then you can ask those questions. But unfortunately, we can't, due to compliance, answer all kinds of questions on this forum. And apart from that, I do have oh, and it's important to mention to everybody listening that during the hackathon, it is 28 hours. You saw on Pramod the difference between the screenshot for the solution and afterwards. We don't expect to have a fully awesome, fully functioning, bug-free system within 28 hours. We do understand that there is some challenges, but the whole point of a hackathon is it's like your jumping block, to be able to start off with something and then to actually later on work on it and actually improve it. So we don't expect to have something done in 28 hours and that's finished. No, it's starting, and then to actually progressively improve it. And you saw 2 great examples from Virtual Control and from Nextshore, where they started from scratch, did the 28 hours, very crazy, little sleep, and improved it and continuously. And they're always adding new features and all that. So I would have one question for all 3 of you: is A, are you going to join this year's hackathon, which is 10th to 12th of September? And B, what would be the advice you would give to somebody that hasn't attended a hackathon before? I say Thomas first. You can't hear us. We'll move to Philip then.
Okay. Well, we are planning on setting up a team of Fraunhofer and some other parties here in Frankfurt, and we're looking forward. And I think the most important is that people have fun. It's a little bit sad in times of Corona that we can't meet, because that's a big part usually to do the networking. But we can all see it as a preparation for the next hackathon that hopefully will lead us to another location and all meet again. And use this as a test run or dry run or preparation or first stage for the next person-to-person hackathon. But still, I mean, it's organized well, so we should all have fun, and also get in contact with each other more virtually has also advantages. If you've got a family, you can spend more time with them than when you fly to Geneva or any other place. But I'm really looking forward to the output, because that's so important to get the feedback for the data model group, for example, that I'm working in from the implementation side. And I would like to encourage everybody, also companies, startups who are far away from one record so far, to bring in their solution, because it's not that difficult to connect. It's following modern standards and modern procedures. So yeah, I'd love to be surprised by what you can do with it. I'm looking forward to the results.
Perfect. Thomas, you able to?
So I'm muted, so perfect. I'm on audio. I find that the hackathon is the platform to not just meet people and connect and build your professional network. It's an absolutely fantastic opportunity to work with the same-minded people around a challenge which is immense, right? And we heard from Philip and looking into the 5 steps as well, that there are countless opportunities out there when it comes to one record, multiple use cases, and I'm absolutely thrilled and excited to come up with creativity, what we can do next, and enriching the functionalities on what we've built already. So we are all in.
Perfect. Rod, final words?
I would echo the enthusiasm shown by both my fellow speakers here. It was an awesome experience last time. That was the first one we attended, and I can tell you that we've got a lot from it already, as evidenced by this presentation here. I look forward to the networking, getting to know people, the ideas that flow through, and it gives us a very non-competitive environment to share ideas, which I think is very, very important, because we're all here for the innovation. And I think together we can make this industry come out and actually embrace much of this stuff, by showing all the cool things we can do with it. That would be my take on it. But yeah, I mean, I would encourage everybody to participate, and I think it has a lot of value. Apart from that, the fun that Philip mentioned, I mean, it was just a very nice 28 hours to be involved in. Checking in on each other, talking to each other. The virtual was okay, but looking forward to a face-to-face sometime soon, maybe a year or so.
Perfect. Well, with that, I would like to thank all of the speakers for taking the time for presenting and showing us really cool ideas. And I think it's just the start of an exciting journey, and then there is more to come, and there's more opportunities to be had. So excited to continue the collaboration and to see you guys hopefully soon, and at least at the next hackathon. And with that, I thank you, and then I will close the call. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arno.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for listening and coming up to this presentation. Bye now.